Today, we're covering the case of Tatsuya Ichihashi, a case known for its uniquely bizarre and disturbing details. When 22-year-old Lindsay Hawker traveled to Tokyo to teach English, it was supposed to be the start of an amazing adventure. Instead, it would turn into something so unimaginably horrific, it would become the subject of a best-selling memoir and later a movie. As for Lindsay's killer, his desperate attempts to avoid identification were so gruesome, they'd earn him a near-cult hero status. So prepare yourselves. This is the disturbing story of Tatsuya Ichihashi. Before we start, we would like to send our heartfelt sympathies to the loved ones of Lindsay Ann Hawker, whose life was ended in such a savage and senseless way. This story takes us to Tokyo, Japan, a megacity of 35 million inhabitants famous for both the ultra-modern and the traditional. Home to anime, manga, electronic megastores, and more Michelin stars than London and Paris combined. Tokyo is a 24-hour metropolis that combines millennia-old traditions with futuristic technology. Neon-lit skyscrapers sit side by side to historic temples. It was to the Itagawa ward of Tokyo that 22-year-old Lindsay Hawker arrived in October 2007, ready to start her new job at the Tokyo branch of Nova, Japan's largest private English school. Lindsay was from a town near Coventry in Warwickshire, England, where she had grown up in a close-knit family with parents Bill and Julia and two sisters. Lindsay was known for her boundless enthusiasm for life. She was also bright and ambitious, graduating with a first-class honors degree in biology from the University of Leeds in the summer of 2007 studying. Lindsay was ready for a change and made plans for a world trip with her boyfriend of 4 years, Ryan Garside. Lindsay would set off first, heading to Tokyo, where she would teach English, before her boyfriend would join her the following summer. Lindsay adapted fast to life on the other side of the globe. She made solid friends with her two roommates with whom she shared an apartment. Her employers at Nova said she put every effort into her new role. She communicated daily with her friends and family about life in Tokyo. In one email to her sisters, she described how the city of Tokyo felt safe and secure, safer, in fact, than Britain. They were words that would later haunt her family. On the morning of March 25th, she packed her tote bag with her teaching materials and said goodbye to her roommates and left the apartment on her bike. She would never return again. On March 26, 2007, at 2:30 p.m., Lindsay's father received a call from a staff member at the Nova Language School. Lindsay had failed to turn up for her classes for 2 days in a row. Her roommates had already tried to contact police when Lindsay had failed to return home from work the previous evening. But the message had not been conveyed to the proper authorities within the department. Lindsay's family were distraught. Her father booked a flight to Tokyo for himself and Lindsay's boyfriend, Ryan. At Lindsay's apartment, officers tried to piece together Lindsay's last movements. Both her roommates and her boyfriend, Ryan, had vital information to share, and all of it created a clear and chilling picture. 6 days earlier, on March 20th, Lindsay had been traveling home on the train after drinks at a bar called Hippy Dippy Doo when a strange man approached her. He was several years older than her and claimed to be one of her students in her class. But Lindsay knew all of her students, and he was not one of them. Lindsay had politely explained herself and exited the train at her station. She had almost arrived home on her bike when she suddenly spotted the man right behind her, jogging fast. He had tailed her all the way from the station and now pitched up on her doorstep. He asked again if she recognized him. Now, a little frightened, Lindsay repeated that she didn't. This time he explained that he wanted to go abroad to study and was desperate for an English tutor. He then asked her for a glass of water. Thinking he was simply enthusiastic and maybe a little eccentric, Lindsay invited him into her apartment, where her roommates were both home. Inside, he sketched a picture of Lindsay and signed it with his name, Tatsuya Ichihashi, a phone number and an email address. Officers now searched Lindsay's room, where they located the sketch the man had given her. Lindsay, her roommate said, had agreed to meet the man in a cafe for an English lesson. They had warned her against it, but Lindsay could see no harm in it, and on March the 20th had set off to meet him at the Duotour Cafe. It was the last time they'd see her. Lindsay's last Facebook message was written on March 20th and had said, "Love you lots. Don't worry about the guy who chased me home, it's just crazy Japan. Miss you." Meanwhile, police had pulled grainy surveillance footage from the morning of the 25th of March, 2007, at the Duotour Cafe near the station in East Tokyo. The footage captured Lindsay and the mysterious man named Ichihashi ordering drinks at the counter. Lindsay appears to feel awkward, repeatedly pushing her hair aside. The pair sit together at a table for 50 minutes while Lindsay gives him a language lesson. When it's time to leave, Ichihashi makes exaggerated gestures of searching and failing to find his money. At 10 a.m., the pair get up and leave and are seen getting into a taxi together. By 5:20 p.m., on the evening of March the 26th, 2 officers had located and arrived at Tatsuya's apartment in Ichikawa. The man who Lindsay had just gotten into a taxi with had, in fact, been watching her for months. Year-old Tatsuya Ichihashi lived alone in a 3-bedroom apartment bought for him by his parents in the Ichibe Prefecture, a suburban town east of Tokyo, the son of 2 wealthy professionals. His mother was a dentist and his father a brain surgeon. Tatsuya hadn't inherited either his parents' ambition or academic ability. Under his parents' duress, he attended Chiba University and graduated with a major in horticulture in 2005, but he had never worked in the field of horticulture and had spent the past 2 years living off of his parents' monthly allowance. Tatsuya found himself a girlfriend during his time at college, but those who knew him described him as a loner, someone known in Japanese culture as a hikikomori, or someone who suffers extreme degrees of social isolation. He was obsessed with violent manga, and for several years had been displaying some troubling behavior. 2 years earlier, he had assaulted a woman on a street while attempting to rob her. The woman had settled out of court with Tatsuya's parents. While at university, Tatsuya had been given a formal warning for stalking a woman. Oddly, his girlfriend later described their relationship as stable and serious. She would visit him several times during his early years in prison. She said Tatsuya was obsessed with physical fitness and would spend hours each day working out at the gym and regularly cycling 15 miles a day. By 2007, however, there were signs that Tatsuya's mental health was deteriorating. He reportedly told acquaintances that he felt he was becoming unstable, but it's not clear whether anyone urged him to seek help. Instead, it seems he developed a fixation with a random stranger, the young British English language teacher Lindsay Hart Hawker. According to police, Tatsuya had stalked Lindsay Hawker for several months before working up the courage to approach her on the train. He spotted the logo for the English language school on her tote bag and used it as an excuse to connect with her. He now used the excuse of having no money to lure her to his apartment in Ichikawa. It was a 5-minute drive away. Once outside, Lindsay asked the taxi driver to wait for her while she went in to collect the money. 7 minutes passed with no signs of Lindsay, and the taxi driver drove away. He was the last person, other than her killer, to see her alive. Once, at Tatsuya's apartment, police waited outside for him to exit. They were not permitted by Japanese law to knock without proper cause. Knowing his previous allegations of stalking and robbery, they had called for backup. By 8 p.m., 9 officers had assembled on both the ground floor and outside of his 4th-floor apartment. 2 hours after the last officers arrived, Tatsuya burst out of his apartment and headed down the building's fire escape. He was barefoot and carrying a rucksack. With several officers close behind him, Tatsuya evaded them by vaulting the last stairway to the ground, around and sprinting into the street. He was spotted once more by police officers, but once again evaded them by zigzagging through the street. It was the closest they would get to catching him for more than 2 years. As for the location of Lindsay, on the other hand, that would happen much sooner. On Tatsuya's balcony, police noticed a bathtub had been freshly filled with a mix of sand and compost. A potted plant stood next to the bath, as though he had left before having a chance to plant it, and Tatsuya had not quite finished his task. A small white hand protruded from the mixture in the bathtub. Neighbors would later say they heard a heavy scraping sound the evening before, undoubtedly the sound of Tatsuya dragging his bathtub onto the balcony of his apartment. Police uncovered Lindsay's naked body from inside the bathtub. She had been gagged with a scarf, and her feet and hands had been bound with gardening ties. Bruising across her upper body suggested she had endured a savage and prolonged attack. Both Lindsay and Tatsuya had been trained in martial arts. Lindsay had fought off her attacker bravely, but she was no match for Tatsuya in strength. Egg-sized bruises on the left side of her face suggested that she had been struck repeatedly with a fist, while lesser marks on her upper body were likely the result of collisions with furniture. She had been whipped and strangled so violently that the cartilage in her neck was broken. Her head had been shaved and her hair placed in a plastic bag. Her belongings were found strewn about the room. At 3 a.m. on March the 27th, Lindsay's parents received the call no parent ever wants to receive. A body had been found. The trip they had booked to search for their daughter now became a journey to identify her remains. Her father, Bill, said that when he saw her, "I knew it was Lindsay because she was so tall and because she was my daughter, but she was so badly beaten. My life, my soul just fell from beneath me." Wanted posters containing images of Tatsuya now flooded Tokyo. Soon, 30,000 posters had been distributed nationwide. Some showed chilling pictures of Tatsuya in possible disguises, including the killer disguised as a woman. His images were broadcast across national and international news channels. Sightings of Tatsuya came pouring in from all over Japan. Multiple sightings placed him in Kabukicho, a red light district of Tokyo. Police investigated every lead, but he could not be located. Soon, there were rumors that he'd escaped the country or quietly killed himself. Days turned into weeks, and then months. By October 2008, 140 officers had been assigned to the investigation. But despite 8,000 reported sightings and widespread media coverage, police were no closer to finding Tatsuya. By the end of the year, the investigation was stalling. The desperate Hawker family launched a website appealing for information on Tatsuya Ichihashi's whereabouts. Tatsuya's parents, who had remained silent, now came under wrongful suspicion from the public. In response, his mother called a daytime television program and urged her son to give himself up. "It's Mom, Tatsuya," she said in an audio message. "Dad and Mom have decided to speak about our feelings, although we know you won't like this," she said before telling him to attack the police. Later, the couple appeared on television to apologize for their son's crime. In the lead-up to the second anniversary, police printed out life-size cardboard cutouts of Tatsuya to try to raise awareness among the public. The Hawkers returned to Tokyo to plead for information on their daughter's killer. Police increased the reward for information leading to his arrest from 1 million yen to 10 million yen, or the equivalent of about $121,000. Meanwhile, a far sicker interest in the fugitive had been blossoming. Online fan clubs had begun popping up all over the internet, glorifying Tatsuya as an outlaw and a fugitive hero. He became known as Japan's most handsome criminal, nicknamed the fugitive sullen prince and Lord Ichi, and even gaining popularity with young males. blogs, and support groups opened up dedicated to the murderer. What no one knew, of course, was that the appearance of the man police had been hunting had changed quite significantly in the 2 years since they printed his face on wanted posters across Japan. According to an account he later published in a best-selling memoir, Tatsuya had initially wandered around Tokyo. With no money or credit cards and no passport that would enable him to leave the country, he hid out among the tramps in the Flophouse district of the Ibukari Prefecture, northwest of Tokyo. It was only when he saw his face plastered across wanted posters that he realized the scale of the manhunt. He took to living his life as a fugitive, covering his face beneath a hat, wearing glasses, avoiding surveillance cameras, and constantly staying on the move. He didn't contact a single friend or family member, but as the nationwide manhunt gained momentum, he turned to more drastic attempts to disguise his identity. He needed to change his appearance. Assistant. Using a box cutter, he sliced the moles off of his left cheek, markings that had struck him as particularly prominent in his wanted pictures. He then cut off part of his lower lip with scissors in an effort to make them thinner. His first attempt failed when he was unable to push through the excruciating pain, but he did finish the job a few days later in a public bathroom. He then bound up his nose with a thread and needle to make it narrower. While his face healed, he wore multiple surgical masks. Traveling by train and bus, Tatsuya headed south, where he embarked on a pilgrimage of temples in the southwestern island of Shikoku. He wanted to atone for the killing, and when visiting shrines he would pray for Hawker to come back to life. An idea he got from a novel in which the dead are resurrected after someone who is thinking of them tours those same temples. His paranoia over being recognized consumed him, driving him to seek out further changes to his appearance, this time with the help of a plastic surgeon, though. For that, he would need money. Using the name and address of a dead man called Kosuke Inoue, Tatsuya took a job at a construction company in Osaka, where he worked for the next 13 months, saving about 1 million yen. He spent most of the money on 2 cosmetic surgery operations, one to acquire a longer and narrower nose, and the second to raise the bridge of his nose. He gave false names and addresses at the clinics, and failed to return for any follow-up appointments. Colleagues later said he rarely mixed with them, spending most of his time reading comics and watching videos in his room at the company's dormitory. He never removed his red cap or black-rimmed glasses in public. When he was persuaded to join the company bowling trip in April, he hid behind a colleague in a group photograph. We gossiped that he was an odd guy, but I never thought he was the suspect, a former colleague told the Yomiuri Shimbun newspaper. It occurs to me now that he was saving the money for cosmetic surgery. In the end, the attempts to obscure his identity were his undoing. Tatsuya visited a clinic in the southwestern city of Fukuoka in mid-October with a request to change the shape of his mouth. On October 24th, he visited a clinic in Nagoya, where he had his nose uplifted. But staff at the clinic were intrigued by the strange scars on his left cheek, where he had removed his moles. They reported his visit to police and submitted multiple pictures of the man who had visited their clinic. Police identified the man as Tatsuya. On the 4th of November 2009, police released the images to the press, disclosing that he had undergone plastic surgery. His new image was soon splashed all over the Japanese news. These images showed a very different Tatsuya Ichihashi. He was minus the 2 prominent moles on his left cheek. He had a thinner bottom lip, a higher bridge to his nose, and a double fold to his eyelids. Tatsuya wrote in his memoir that he froze when he saw the news on TV with his image. "My heart raced," he wrote. "I gazed at it, trembling." He immediately got a haircut and bought a party disguise set, including a beard, sideburns, and mustache, and then headed to the ferry terminal at Osaka. On November 10, 2009, moments before he was due to set sail for Okinawa, an island in Japan's far south, a passer's-by gaze was drawn to a tall, suspicious-looking youth wearing a hat, sunglasses, and a paper surgical mask. More than 2.5 years after he had become one of Japan's most wanted suspects, Tatsuya Ichihashi was arrested at the ferry terminal in Osaka for the murder of Lindsay Hawker. This has been a long, hard battle for the Hawkers, and the battle is over. We've worked tirelessly as a family. We've never given in for our daughter. We've never given in. We wanted justice, and we finally got justice. I'd also just like to thank the Japanese police. After a very bungled start to my daughter's murder, they've got their man. They've worked tirelessly, and they've eventually got the man. And the chief officer told me they would get the man sooner or later. We're just so relieved that this part of our life is over. I can go down to my daughter's grave this afternoon and tell them, thank you. I'd just like to say, I'd like to echo what my parents have said, but also I hope that our case kind of gives other families some kind of hope. We thank the Japanese press, we thank the Japanese people, but really, it says that I've done this. We haven't given up. Not from day one. All the sleepless nights, all the not eating, all the crying, all the tears. It's all been worth it now. And we've got what we wanted, which was justice for Lindsay Kakoi. He's really cool, one blogger posted. When he was arrested, I thought his disheveled black hair and the line along his neck to his jaw made him look so sexy. Another side, other fans explained their admiration for Ichihashi with one writing. The son of physicians, he is tall. He has a lean, mean physique, a talent for illustrating, and can converse in a foreign language. Lindsay's distraught family pushed for Ichihashi to be executed through Japan's death penalty procedure. His lawyers, however, successfully argued that he should be kept alive based on the potential for him to be reformed. During his trial, Tatsuya admitted raping and killing Lindsay Hawker, but claimed he killed her by accident when he was trying to muffle her screams for help. He also said that he had attempted to resuscitate her and had called an ambulance, but no evidence has ever been produced to support that claim. According to prosecutors, he had beaten Lindsay shortly after she had entered the apartment and used tape to bind her while he her. In early 2011, Tatsuya published a book detailing his time on the run, titled Until the Arrest. In the book, he skipped over the atrocities of his crime, the truth of what happened that morning, and his motives for killing an innocent woman, instead focusing on his adventures while, as a fugitive, living in constant fear of arrest. The book went on to become a bestseller in both Japan and Britain, so much so, the story was turned into a film called I Am Ichihashi, Journal of a Murderer. On July 21, 2011, the Chiba District Court sentenced Ichihashi to life imprisonment for the murder of Lindsay Hawker. Lindsay's father said of the sentencing, "We wanted justice, and we finally got justice." Her boyfriend, Ryan Garside, said he had made plans to propose to the English teacher, who had been the best thing in my life. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video. Comment down below your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. Also hit the notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new, shocking case. If you have a case you would like to see given more coverage, drop us a line in the comments. And thank you for your support. We are grateful for every one of our subscribers. So, until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.